Firstly, I just want to say thank you all so much for the reception on that last video. It means so much to me, and thank you all for the support. I hope you all enjoyed this video as much as the last, despite the topic switch up. That being said, I know it's a little late, but I wanted to do a little something for Mouthwashing's anniversary. I was gonna do this sooner, but then I got wrapped up in Haunted Hotel, and then the Has-Been Season 2 release snuck up on me, and I got inspired. It took me a long while to actually finally play the game, the initial hype and fanbase having died down for months by the time I got around to finally experiencing the game for myself. Of course, with how popular the game was at the time, it was basically impossible to avoid spoilers for it. The internet's how I heard about the game in the first place, after all, so it was only natural I'd come across spoilers. You'd think spoilers would ruin the impact of such an emotional, character-driven, story-heavy game, but, to my surprise, I was still caught off guard by a lot of things, and the spoilers actually enhanced my experience through the whole playthrough. To give you all an idea of my mindset going into the game, essentially all I knew was that it was in a PS1-esque graphic style and most of the major plot points. Anya and Jimmy, the crash, the discovery that the cargo's nothing but mouthwash, Anya doing what she did in the medbay, Daisuke going through the vent, and how Swansea reacted to that. But there was still a lot I was blind to when I loaded up the game. First impressions are always important. Doubly so for a game where your player's first impression isn't even the game's actual mechanics. And my god, Mouthwashing hit the mark in every way possible. The main menu is the perfect mix of comforting and eerie. The warm lighting of the serene sunset, the ominous technological and broken sounds, combined with the soothing synth and piano notes. It almost feels like a strange dream you can't tell if you're supposed to be comforted by or running away from. Especially with Curly's mangled body right there in front of you on the stretcher, all bloodied and bandaged. Then we get sent to the cold vacuum of space with the simple message of, I hope this hurts. And it does, in all the best ways possible. Like I said before, I was blind to a surprising majority of the game. This somehow managed to include the fact we played as Jimmy. How this happened, I have no clue. Who did I think we played as? Honestly, never knew either. But this ever so important fact flying under the radar made the first seconds of my original playthrough something I'll never forget. I'll never be able to let go of the utter horror I felt realizing I played as the one who caused all this to happen, and not even getting the chance to process that fact when faced with a much more prominent realization that I was seemingly caught between the choice of actively contributing to the problem and directly causing the crash that eventually gets everyone killed, or passively allowing it to happen by doing nothing despite the system's warnings and being just as much to blame. In hindsight, such a moment as an introduction is the perfect way to set the tone of the game by making your apparent choices direct reflections of the two main characters of the story. However, surprisingly, as much as I love this moment, the part that really got me hooked and the moment I realized how good spoilers would be to the experience, aside from the despair of wanting to change fate and being forced to watch knowing it can't be, comes right after. This game has some amazing storytelling in a variety of ways, be it dialogue, audio, visuals, even player actions. The team at Wrong Organ have mastered the craft and display show don't tell in every inch of their work. One of these moments is right at the beginning, just after setting the ship to crash. You start wandering the dark halls of the Tulpar, and you start thinking it might just be some typical spooky sequence that maybe ends with a jump scare and moves on without much thought. But it doesn't go for scary. It goes for unsettling. More and more Polly posters start appearing on the walls. Since when were there so many? The doors are locked, so you keep turning around, and you slowly realize there's no escape. You are nothing more than a rat in its dark cage, desperately clawing at the edges, looking for any way out. Knowing exactly what Jimmy did only enhanced this feeling tenfold. I could feel the way someone's mind goes blank when they realize they've done something they can't take back. That gradual tightening in your throat when you're trying to think and explain, but your words can't seem to claw their way out. I don't condone the things Jimmy's done, and would never dream of anything like it in a million years. But by God does this game immerse you in its characters' mindsets and make you feel that dread, that fear of responsibility, the crack under the pressure of it all. It's not just for Jimmy either. In the sections where we play as Curly, there's also that same gradual build-up. In the first crash sequence, such a vast open space leaves you to sort of wander a bit, wonder what's going on and where you even are. But as the soundtrack slowly builds, you get the sense of desperately looking for something. You don't know what it is, but you know it exists somewhere. It's the same for the second sequence, where you find Jimmy in the hall just outside the cockpit and realize what's going on. The mix of learning what's going on as the game progresses and the visual representation of Curly's terror making such a short hallway feeling like miles of doors he constantly has to go through builds this perfect feeling of desperately chasing something but being seconds too late when you finally get there. Even the cemetery section, where you encounter Swansea, is immersive by using a lack of explanation to play into Jimmy's disorientation and give us that same sense of confused frustration he develops by feeling hunted until we realize what we're supposed to do to progress. Speaking of the cemetery section, can I just talk about how well they did Daisuke's death for a second? Like, I knew what was going to happen right from the gate. I was prepared to not get attached to anybody. But then they had to make Swansea give that damn speech, and I couldn't stop the slow building horror of watching something I couldn't stop. I almost started sobbing then and there, and nearly physically begged Swansea to stop. The game is only 3 hours long, and I was already going in with the expectation of not getting too hung up on the guy. But now, he's the only character death I still nearly cry for every time I see angsty fan content of it. The scene's only enhanced by the game's selective use of voice acting, and having one of the only human sounds being the panicked, labored breathing of a young boy realizing he's about to die before suddenly getting cut off when Swansea brings the axe down, gives a lot more impact to the scene by drawing attention to it with such a rare occurrence. I know this fun fact has kinda gotten beaten to the ground in the community, but I'm gonna say it again as well. I love the heavy-handed iconography with Daisuke and Swansea. Swans are known to chase out or kill their young if they're sick or wounded to protect the rest of the brood, and this symbolism for Swansea is only enhanced by Daisuke's association with the hibiscus on his shirt and scattered around as a stand-in for him after his passing, representing the fragility of life and the pain of dying young due to their short blooming cycle. It really drives home just how much of an impact Jimmy's selfishness had on the rest of the crew without saying a word or being over the top with his visuals, and once again displays Wrong Organ's skill with show don't tell. The name of the game itself leads to the overall theme as well, and it re-emphasizes this a couple of times as well. Mouthwash was never a cure for the root of the problem. It just covers the symptom. I'm not sure if this is intentional or not, but this makes Curly's eye being the logo of the game extremely poetic in hindsight. Even the blue of the eye reminiscent of the blue-green mouthwash. He is just like the mouthwash they're carrying. He sees the problem in Jimmy and his behavior towards Anya, but doesn't act on it to properly address it, just mediating the two as best he can to eliminate the symptoms of it all. Even the line about being 99.99% effective is a nod to this, and no matter how obvious it may be, I love it nonetheless. There's even some more subtle things I've seen pointed out by the community I totally understand, and love is a little detail, even if it wasn't intentional. For example, Jimmy's point of view being subconsciously reinforced by Anya's lack of presence despite being the primary catalyst for the story, reflecting how little Jimmy cares or even thinks of her, seeing her as some useless, unqualified nurse. He's more actively tormented by the idea of fatherhood than the fact he committed one of the most heinous crimes in human history, if the constant infant imagery and sound effects in the soundtrack are anything to go off of. Thinking about it now, the infant is the perfect antithesis to Jimmy as a character. An inescapable, physical manifestation of having to be responsible for the things he's done, unable to brush them off as a heated moment of anger and making it all the more real. This sort of invisible storytelling isn't even seen in just Jimmy either. A lot goes unsaid and implied that really give us some insight to Anya as a character as well. Not only is she clearly underestimated by Jimmy, considering the fact she's kept a man with pretty much zero skin alive for nearly half a year on meager supplies still on the ship, but she also knows how to read people really well. I once saw a take, I forget where, that Anya was lying about not being able to handle Curly's sounds when he took the pills. They pointed out he would have needed to still eat when the ship had real food available, and yet the player only ends up doing so during the valve sequence where, if we mess up, he violently regurgitates said food. In hindsight, could this be a fever dream-esque recollection of such events in Jimmy's times as Curly's caretaker? Possibly. But the person I saw proposed the idea that Anya knew how Jimmy got when he didn't feel useful or in control, and so, to stop him from hurting anyone else, she gave him the tasks she knew would be the least dangerous. She knows food being force-fed can be extremely dangerous, as the valve sequence shows, where in contrast, pills are designed to be taken whole, perhaps a bit painful if forced, but very hard to cause a choking hazard. Sure, subtle implications like that aren't explicitly canon or confirmed. We only get to see a snapshot of these people's lives after all, but it's fun to glean possible insight into characters and gives them some real depth, even if it's only through perception. The fact that such overcomplication is even possible is a sign of good writing and character development. And that leads us to the ending, which is surprisingly poetic when you think about it, and completely caught me off guard. I wasn't ready for the gunshot, and more than likely made one of those exaggerated YouTuber faces. But, if you look a little deeper at it, it all kind of comes full circle. Throughout the game, Curly's physical state reflects his indecision when it came to Jimmy, but the cryopod re-solidifies that, leaving him just as literally physically frozen as he was mentally when he had to debate taking action or acting like nothing happened. I love this game, and I'm sure I could pull the imagery and sound design apart bit by bit and dissect all sort of meaning from it until my dying breath. It's that well developed. But I think you get the picture on my thoughts about this game, so I'll shut up for now. I'm thinking of doing an I Have No Mouth and I'm a Scream video next, but so far it's looking like a has-been sequel's in the works with how the season's turning out. Happy early Thanksgiving, everybody, and I'll see you the next time I crawl out of my rat den.